Hi everybody, Alan Monroe here from the Taxi to Trader group on Facebook. We're currently having a discussion about how we change the name of one of our pages that Graham and I both run. Graham and I both run the Taxi to Trader group. You'll have seen Graham's post about running the changes. That triggered a couple of thoughts in my head about what's happening for the future for taxis. And here's a little bit of a presentation because you don't want to just hear me talking. It's a lot easier to say some things in pictures as well. So here's a little bit of a presentation I've just knocked up, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Cheers. I'll just move this over here. You don't want to see me. Not while I'm talking anyway. Right, I'll move myself over here. Right. So what the future holds. Well, let's just have a look at what's actually affecting our profits at the moment. Overcrowding, cabs, both, hackneys, private hire, more and more competition. Traffic is getting worse. MOT, maintenance costs, tyres, fuel, all going up. Yeah. I don't know about you, but at the moment costs are going up and takings aren't necessarily increasing too much. Obviously, some fares have increased, but actually making money at taxiing now is getting harder and harder. And then obviously we've also got a few people that we might see every week. These guys, the public perception. Our name is getting worse. There are things in the press all the time about taxi drivers doing this, taxi drivers doing that. They don't see the good, but never mind. We've learned to deal with that. So what the future holds. What have I been looking at over the last couple of days since Graham's presentation? Well, I looked at a ZNet top 10 report. It's looking at the top 10 companies looking at autonomous vehicles. Because that's the way that the market's going. And it names people like GM, so that's General Motors, for those who don't understand the abbreviation, Ford, Daimler Bosch. That isn't a misprint from me. That's a combination of Daimler-Benz, who own Mercedes, and Bosch. Waymo, which used to be the Google, what we call it, looking at the way Google were looking at autonomous vehicles. And then there's one from Volvo, Autoliv, Ericsson, Zenuity. Interesting there that Volvo and Ericsson, they're both Swedish, both Scandinavian countries. I hadn't heard of Ericsson for a long time since I had an old Ericsson phone. So what and who are these people? I put the question there. These are companies that are big. They are very big. Some of them are manufacturers. Some are software. Some are GPS. But as you can see from that bottom one, only the biggest manufacturers of cars can actually look at doing this on their own. If Daimler-Benz can't look at doing it on their own because they need technology and they've gone to Bosch, and that tells us a lot. And there are an awful lot out there. In the current ZNet top 10, or current, it was a couple of months old, Uber are in there because Uber are just going to tie up with whichever company produces vehicles for them. And who wasn't? And Tesla went in there. Now, Tesla, we know, have got electric cars. It wouldn't be too much of a jump for them to actually hit autonomous vehicles. One key thing I spotted was Volvo. That's why I put them in that top list. I could have put another couple of companies in there. In the top, it was a top 10. There's only 7 in there. 1, 2, 3, 6 actually. Was key was that Kurtzler, one of the guys who was interviewed, he said Volvo is a company we need to keep a watch on because they've been doing a lot and not saying anything. I wasn't even aware that Volvo were looking at it. All I was aware that Volvo were very, very into electronic cars. The hybrids. No, they're going to. Is it next year or something? They're only producing all electronic cars. So it just shows you that things are moving that we aren't aware of. So a couple of little facts and a couple of little interesting pieces that I picked up from that article. Waymo, the Google, 4 million miles tested, and now they're looking at minivans. That was just testing in normal cars of all sorts. I'll show you a couple of pictures later from Google, and they were testing all sorts of vehicles. And 4 million miles is not something that you undertake without actually looking at moving on. Daimler Bosch, they are looking and targeting taxi specifically. So what you guys out there in your E-Class, your C-Class, your S-Class, whichever Mercedes, any of that group, these guys are actually targeting what you do. I'm not saying don't get one. I'm not saying get rid of your Mercedes, because they are excellent cars. But you need to be aware that these guys are looking at replacing you, because if there's no driver needed, that's you. Ford, their whole focus is on commercial vehicles. That's not just us. That's not just taxis. That's buses, lorries. I don't know how it would affect the F-150, which of course one is sold. Is it still every 1 minute? But they are focusing on commercial vehicles because that's where they see a growth market. Probably because that's where there is money to be made. Then BMW, Intel, FCA. I don't know who FCA is. I didn't investigate that any further. By 2021, expect to have level 4 and level 5 ride-hail cars for Urban Pilot. Now, ride-hail is Lyft and Uber. Obviously, in the UK, we'll probably have some competitors shortly. I know there's some apps out there now that there's one launching in Manchester soon with 8,000 taxis all bidding for the same type of work. So that's something else we'll have to pick up. I'm only looking at autonomous vehicles here. There's a lot of things happening on that sort of side. But level 4 and 5 is where there is no driver required. Level 3 is what we currently see with Uber, where you have to have a driver there. But level 4 and level 5 are driverless vehicles, and that's by 2021, which by my reckoning is only 2.5 years away. That isn't too far. Here's 3 of those cars. Left-hand one, obvious. That's a Volvo. Yeah. When I saw it, I thought, Volvo have been doing a lot. Obviously not in styling, because that looks like a Volvo. That looks like the old T90s. Then we've got another company in the middle, Nutonomy. Nice looking car. On the right hand side, an SUV. But I think that's a bit tall to be a taxi, but you'd probably get away with it. But the next 2 pictures, show, there's one that show Uber's take, and there's one that shows Google. Uber want the one picture, and Google quite like the other. Yes, fleets of their cars. Uber would love a fleet. That's their Fords, That's a picture taken of the Fords that are all Uber badged. In fact, it's hard not to go on to Google and look for images you can reuse of autonomous vehicles and not stumble across Uber on pretty much all of them. Volvo have got Ubers. BMW have got Uber. In fact, I believe that the Uber accident that they had, that was in a Volvo. I've seen some pictures and I'm sure that must have been that then. Right. How far have we gone? Singapore built a dedicated town just to test what they call a self-driving bus. Out there in Singapore. Now, Singapore government is very, very pro autonomous vehicles. It's very pro technology. I've never been. I know people who have, and they say it is just an amazing place to go, and it is so far ahead of everything else. Unfortunately for us mere taxi drivers, that means that they are further ahead on getting driverless taxis. And if they get driverless taxis, the rest of the world will follow. They're using a company called Naver, which I'd never heard of. It's a technology, a university and college over that way. And they're currently running what they call a self-drive bus. There's some good points to come out of this. Don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. Now, here's one of their buses. Now, just have a look at the size. That's one person stood next to it. They reckon that bus holds 15 people. Now, I don't know about you, but that pretty much puts any taxi out of the game. Local work. Obviously, we're looking at just local work at the moment, but cities and that. But that is a 15-seater. I could see that being expanded to a 30, 40, 50-seater quite easily. So there we go. That's not just taxi drivers, that's bus drivers. In fact, not hard to see that actually being converted for cargo or even deliveries. So that's delivery drivers, lorry drivers, white van deliveries. We know Amazon are looking at drones this is just a drone on wheels. Amazon would quite easily convert to these and use these to deliver all of their parcels. So what the future holds, for me, over the next 5 to 10 years, I can see complete change in the taxi market, in the way that the way the taxi market runs, because I don't think we as drivers have got too long a life left, especially, in fact, more so in the cities. Myself and Graham, we both live in pretty rural areas. Decent size, Hastings is a lot bigger than Kirkham, where I live and where I work. However, we feel for those people who are in the bigger cities, the ones who are in Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, London, obviously, in the UK, but then New York, Washington, any of the Californian cities, St. Louis, even, anywhere, I think in America, with the grid system that you use, with the way that you have blocks, it's even easier for these autonomous vehicles to actually find their way about. The public sees only what it wants. It doesn't realise the effect it's having. Autonomous vehicles sounds great. It sounds like we're all going to be driving around. You're all just going to walk out. There's going to be a car there. Go where we want. We can have a drink. We can have a meal. We can do what we want. However, it's going to cause an awful lot of redundancies. I don't know exactly how many, but I can imagine in the UK, taxi drivers, 40, 50,000 affected. Mechanics. Don't need mechanics if you haven't got so many taxis. If they're all driving the same cars, it will just be huge fleets of these things. And it will be big companies. No more independent drivers, no more independent small companies. It will be big companies who will just roll these out as franchises across all the big cities and big towns. Like I said, at the moment, I think it's the big cities, towns, urban conurbations, as the technical term would be, because that's where the demand is. That's also where the most congestion is. So how would it affect us out in the sticks? Well, at the moment, I don't think it would affect us too quickly. So maybe 5, 10 years, maybe a bit too short. But in the future, when we go to Manchester, we would just drop off at a hub. There'd be a hub somewhere out there. We would just drop off at big park and ride that we see at the moment. You'd drop off there, and then the autonomous vehicles would be there. In the same way you drop off at a bus station or an airport now, I think there will be hubs for these autonomous vehicles. I think the centre of London would be a no-go zone. I think the centre of, imagine Shanghai, Singapore, Beijing with autonomous vehicles. If the government just suddenly wants to stop everything from moving, they can just tell everybody to shut it down. If there's an accident of some sort, let's say in the UK, on the M6, tonight there's been an accident, a lorry's overturned. Pandemonium everywhere around Preston. Preston will be at a standstill. It happened half an hour, 40 minutes ago. Preston will be at a standstill now. If they've got control of all of the HGVs and all of the buses, and they can just speak to the manufacturers, speak to the major shareholders in this, and say, look, we've got a problem. We need you to get all your vehicles onto the inside lane and park up for an hour. They can do it. That will clear. And that would help the overall congestion, I believe. This is just me thinking off the top of my head. Buses and lorries, HGVs, we've seen the test with, I can't remember if it was BMW or Volvo, where they had 2 lorries going at 60k, 70k down an autobahn right behind one another. No need for any spaces, because the collision software is so good that should the first one touch the brakes, because they speak to one another, they are literally stopping together. The collision software at the moment, which is what we'd see as a level 3, looking at the documentation, where at the moment we've got collision software in some of the vehicles. The latest BMWs, I know, have got it, and some of the other Nissans, I think, have got them, where they brake for you. They can auto brake. They see what's going on. They know when the lights come on, this sort of thing. That's a level 3. The old level 1 and level 2 was where your wipers came on, your lights came on when it went dark. So that's where we're moving to. But like I say, complete and utter change. And it's something that scares me. It scares Graham. We've spoken about it. And this is why I'm doing this as a way of not just trying to scare people into it, but also to make people more aware that we need to move on. We need to change. And that's what Graham and I are looking to do. Here's the 2 articles. If anybody has watched this through to this point, congratulations. And if you want to look at the articles, they're there. If you want me to send the links, feel free. Get in touch with me, and I'll send you them across. If you message me on Facebook, or just drop a good comment in one of the shares that we've got. So, oh, that's great. No, that's not Graham. I can't say that's Graham just because he likes wearing hats. But that's Johnny Robot. Yeah. When we saw it in Total Recall, we laughed. I wasn't a taxi driver at the time. We laughed. Yeah. But that is the way it's going. It's going to be autonomous drivers. In fact, there won't be it won't even be a Johnny Robot in there. He won't be there. Yeah. There might be an Arnold Schwarzenegger wanting to rip somebody's head off, if you remember the film. But just the last little plug for Graham and I, we are trying to help paid drivers. I know we this is concentrated on taxis and Uber, but we want to help any paid driver change the direction, and fight those falling profits by sharing what we have learned about trading Forex from our cabs. So if you've enjoyed what I've said, thank you. If you've got this far, thank you. Please like, share, comment, do what you want with this. If you want a copy of it, just ask me and I can send you a copy over. And thanks for listening. Cheers. Bye-bye.